So, welcome back after our little coffee break, and our last session of our event now is a round table talking about circularity in aquaculture and sustainable aquaculture, and also getting some ideas from some new projects. So iFishIENCi, as a research and innovation action, has used public funding to get some of these pilots going, to start quantifying circularity in RAS systems, for example, for some of the first work that has been done specifically on this. So I want to introduce, we have a little panel here, and also if there's any questions or comments from the audience, then we have a microphone here and we have the chat online. But we have Inma from Lightot and Dominique Durand from Covartec and Dorinda from Norse, two of the speakers. But Dominique, I can maybe start with you and get maybe some of your reflections of how far we've come on this topic with our four-year European Innovation Action, and what are the next steps building on our research so far?
I will not touch algae because Dorinda is here and she's going, I think, to talk about it. But I would possibly reflect on the last presentation from Kate on looking at new routes for our valorization. So I think the results, as you saw, are very promising on some aspects. And especially touching some of the high-value industry that she has been presenting. So going away from using waste as fertilizer, which is very low value, to something of higher value. So you saw also through the result that actually some differences in the sludge can make a big difference in terms of how microorganisms can grow. The goal being, as Kate was saying, not to have to add many things, because then the cost will increase and the competitiveness or profitability will be reduced for the industry. But at least, so we have been doing that on rainbow trout, freshwater. Of course, the next step is here in Norway is salmon and salty water, basically, or sea water, looking at different sludge, also during the growing phase of the different fishes. So then we can analyze that and make a specific, basically, screening of the same type as that was presented, but dedicated to salmon and seawater, basically.
And so Dorinda and Inma, I wanted to kind of let the audience kind of visualize when we get all this public funding and work across different countries in Europe, what does that actually look like? So we had fish trials in Malta sending sludge to Dorinda, right, to grow macroalgae, and then you sending results to Barcelona to be analyzed. Can you maybe reflect on the coordination and the time scales that this actually takes?
Sure. It's challenging because it wasn't just coming from Malta, it was coming from Germany, from Hungary, from Malta, everywhere. And then we got both the water and the sludge, so often everything was shipped to us, and then we were dividing it again amongst ourselves in Norse and with Lightot, for example, who got the concentrated sludge. Additional challenge there is that Norse is not within the EU, so there's more documentation that you need to show that biomass is being shipped over these countries.
Just send sludge in the mail with normal post.
Oh, you can, but we have to document it well.
Yeah.
But actually, I was surprised how easy it was to send waste streams amongst us, as long as it's all documented well and how do you say it, like all the stickers placed right. Then it was okay. And part of it is just the how do you say it, like the shipment and going to a post office and shipping it. The other thing is very much the understanding. What did we get? Where did it come from? Where and understanding these processes, because we're coming from very different backgrounds. So what is a microalgae and how does a reactor look like where you grow microalgae? I've luckily not in this project, but just to give an example, in other projects I was talking to somebody, let's see the reactors. It was just after Fukushima, so that was a bit of a what are we doing? Glass tubes. Not that scary. But these type of things, you have to tell each other. Fish tanks, to me, is a total, what's that? Well, yeah, well, fish I know, but...
You know what a reactor is, but you don't know what a fish tank is. Yeah.
Kind of. So lots of talking to each other and understanding, what did you then do? Where does it come from? And that takes time, but also it's super informative, very interesting, and it's a lot of back and forth, of course. But and then indeed the next step is the data, but then it's also to explain how do you want your data, what data do you want, yeah, all those kind of questions.
So the data then came to Leitat in Barcelona, and then what did you guys do?
No, it's nice because at the beginning of the project, I started to ask everyone, what is the efficiency of the process? And everyone answered, what do you mean with the efficiency? Yeah. Because for you, from the farm side, the efficiency is one thing. From the microalgae, the efficiency is another thing. So I had to understand the microalgae process, the yeast fermentation process. Yeah. I had to ask many questions to the farm, to Aller Aqua, to understand how they were measuring digestibility. They were really focused on this. But in the meantime, many other people were investigating other things. So I had to put everything together under the same language and try to harmonize in the end in one parameter or in two parameters to measure the circularity.
And that's common language is also kind of a theme that comes up in responsible research and innovation, right? So what is the common language and the creating a new culture of sharing? We talked about the culture of data sharing with iBoss, but here sharing the information, sharing the biological waste, understanding how can this be used, how can this be valued in different chains. And agriculture came up a lot in as a new sector that could benefit from aquaculture waste. What's the next step in maybe making contact with these potential new clients or customers of waste streams from aquaculture? Dominique?
Yeah, so first I wanted to mention that it is rather high on the agenda of the EU to connect actually industry together, to try to identify the waste from one to become the feedstock of another one. So there is an ongoing project to build some kind of platform, European platform, to ease this process as part of the European Green Deal, actually. So certainly at some point we'll be able to build upon that. But we cannot really expect the industry possibly to take the responsibility of doing that directly, because it is not their focus and they should not be. So possibly having something in between, facilitating, talking with the different industry, making them aware, facilitating the registration of the waste in this database or platform may really improve actually the connections between the sectors.
And a role for research institutes like NORS, like Leitat, to be in the middle of industry, client, but also speaking to regulators and giving suggestions. Yes. Because we can't assume that they understand. If it's so hard for us scientists to have a common language, you can have a lot of empathy for the regulators to understand what's going on. So the translation of this into policy documents. But we have a policy document on this, right, Inma?
Yes, it was nice to see that everyone was in the same page around the missing concept that we have for circularity and the assessment and so on. So we started to work together with other. Again, it was a good example of collaboration with other, not only with industry, but also with other projects. It was really nice to see how can put together all the lessons learned. In the end, we have to avoid duplication between the initiatives and work more together to find the solution and ending project with tangible products like this. With a set of recommendations, then the Commission can see the different challenges that we clearly have identified.
Reminder to our participants, if there's any questions or comments, please come up. And also online, we have the chat, and we have about 10 minutes left in this session. So if you have a question or comment, make sure you get that. One thing that struck me was how important the infrastructure, for example, these big fermentation infrastructure that NORS has, how important that is to actually make the advancements. And we've been working at a pilot scale now in here, and in this, how could these results, or how should they be used then to get new projects up to industrial scale? Who needs to be involved? Who needs to talk to each other?
It's super important, and I think that's also coming from the algae perspective, one of the challenges in a way, because there's definitely high costs behind getting these types of infrastructure. And one of the things that we see, especially in the microalgae world, is that a lot of them are startups, but not a lot of capital. And then they choose systems that might not be the best systems, which then gives, again, a negative idea about how much algae can you produce per cost, because you don't produce so much algae. So showing that you can get very high efficiencies in these more expensive systems, but in the end they'll pay you back because you produced a lot more valuable biomass, I think is highly worth it. Challenging is, in a way, is the fact that we're not yet co-located. Now we were really far away in terms of Malta and Germany. It's okay to ship a liter of sludge, but it's going to be more challenging to ship 3 cubic meters of sludge every day. So then we'll have to really come together and maybe say, okay, so in one of our next projects we actually say, okay, the small reactor that I showed in my presentation, the baby one, so to say, is on wheels. So we'll actually wheel it to our neighbors of Marino Monraslab and say, okay, connect. How does it work? That's going to be the next step. And then showing that hopefully brings us to, or actually the project will bring us to going slightly larger and having a forklift truck to bring the big system to the next facility. But it's challenging, but I definitely think that's the next step to go. Show them, look, this is what you can produce with your waste stream, and that they really see the product, see the efficiencies, and then hopefully get interested in taking the next step.
And Dominic.
Just to supplement a little bit, scaling up is it's a key and a complex matter, very much. And we're talking about pilots. So what is a pilot? What is a pre-commercial scale? So it really dependent on what we are doing. But the thing is that somehow this pre-commercial scale or very scaling up pilots may fall a bit between stools when it goes on financing. So it's not completely research anymore. The industry may not invest on that part. And possibly, and then North has been investing a lot to create this potential for scaling up on the different activities. Somehow, so in Norway we have the catapult mechanism that possibly should try to support this type of activity related to bioprocessing, basically, and making the link between research and commercialization. So this is something extremely important, and that I feel that no one want or can really take the responsibility upon, and something is to happen if the chain is to be complete.
Because what you're talking about also is co-location of RAS with sludge and valorization when you're talking about the wheels and the forklifts, but also clusters. So clusters working across different sectors, working together, understanding, getting that common language, so it's not just the 4-year project, but it's actually business as unusual. In Norway, we have this green platform aspect, regional green technology, where people are supposed to work together across different platforms. And that's a huge opportunity for sludge and circular valorization in aquaculture systems, if the diversity of people and competency are there. Boogie, would you like to maybe comment on the role of clusters in this?
Yeah, I could do that.
Our partner from Seafood Innovation Cluster.
Hi everybody. Firstly, I want to thank for great presentations. I don't want to shadow the real brains here. A cluster itself is based on cooperation. I mean, without cooperation there is no cluster. So it's not a decoration, it's sort of the icing on the cake, but you need cake underneath. And it's people like you who make a cluster, even if you're not in my particular cluster, but this kind of cooperation is basically a cluster function, because there are people across all over Europe, actually, and outside of Europe as well, working together to try to resolve some of the major issues we have, and actually valorize what literally the last part of a value chain. We mustn't forget that in this particular case here, with what we're looking at today with sludge, this is literally the last link in a value chain and should be treated as such. And a cluster is a place where you can see the entire value chain in one sort of big picture look. And that's how we work with our aspects of what we do in our cluster, and that is what this project should do and should continue doing, even if we are not underneath the same umbrella in a couple of months.
And we've been also collaborating with some of our sister EU projects, Research Innovation Actions as well. There are other projects have worked on circularity in aquaculture.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that it's we are living in a strong around circularity in aquaculture. We are seeing that many different aquaculture systems is evaluating their circularity in the sense that they feel that it's an attribute. So in this sense, the IMTA systems has many things to say around circularity. But the thing is, it's not a new system, but in fact in Europe, yes. So if we are design a new process with an IMTA system, you have very clear that it's circular, but you have to ensure that the system is very well designed in the sense that you're remediating the nutrients in a very efficient way. And it's not easy. There is a big challenge there. But together with this, the IMTA is there, the opportunities are there. Elisa knows a lot about the IMTA system, but we need also market. So the industry should have very clear where is the market, what the market needs, and then they feel motivated to incorporate new circular processes around the aquaculture system and invest in new production systems.
Great, and so the next steps, disseminating the final results from iFishIENCi to our industry partners. We have industry partners like Aqua and Vitafort, Oxygard in our project too, who intimately know this because they were part of our research innovation cluster. And looking for those new markets and getting those ideas to spark the new collaborations, perhaps more public funding, but also business taking a hold as their new business practice and the first mover advantages also for that. Usho, I welcome you.
I just had a very small question. So I remember talking to Dorinde, I think, once about possible waste valorization routes. I understand that there happen to be innumerable valorization routes, and I think Dorinde mentioned that the economics of it happens to be a challenge. So what is the strategy here? How do we deal with this challenge? I mean, do we refine the valorization routes, the processes involved? Or do we look for, we simply decide on which one the best is and discard the rest? So that's just a very humble question. Thank you.
But a difficult one. But at the same time, I think, as Kate was also in, production of high-value compounds can be a way to go. For example, microalgae yeast are being commercially produced already for high-value components. And the other thing that we really see now is that there will be more and more regulations on what fish farms are allowed to release into the fjords, the amount of nutrients and those kind of things. And if they go over those limits, they might have to stop production for a bit, just not to eutrophiate the fjords, for example. So for them, it can be very interesting to say, hey, if I connect a process afterwards that actually valorizes my waste stream additionally, and also allows me to produce more fish whole year round, then I have a win-win. So it's still, at low levels in a way, but you definitely see those thoughts coming up and a certain interest coming for valorization of waste streams, because it brings them, yes, it might cost money to valorize the waste, but it also brings a lot of money, even in your original product, so the fish. It's going to take some time, but I definitely see that even expensive products can become very interesting.
Great. A comment here from Krista Klavina from Ovum.
Yeah, I just kind of continuing the same thought. A question that I just forgot. It's coming. Yeah, if you could comment a little bit on like, are there some like hope for the small actors in the field? Because like the high value products is of course where the economy lies, but it requires a lot of investment and a lot of turnover and like big production volumes. But there's also like those smaller actors that you mentioned maybe try something, but then they don't invest in the best and the high quality, so the results aren't that good. So do you think that this, like going forward into like trying to make the economy more and more circular, will kind of just end up pushing out the small actors and being only the big ones, and the bigger companies will be the ones that manage to survive this?
Dominic,
yeah. So I would. So that's a very interesting question that we touched a little bit also yesterday on some other matters. So what I would. So the problem also, is about co-localizing also different aspects that and I suppose, or I foresee that one industry, even if big, may not provide enough waste for another industry to pick up that as a commercial value or an opportunity. So I would foresee that when these aspects are taking up, that some kind of cooperative, bringing where all the different actors, small or big, can bring their waste, and that will be taken by another party to make the link to the big industry, would be a way that could work, and that works for the agriculture in many different ways, for example.
Yeah, then you also have that logistic challenges and the transportation that kind of is another hinder. So the districts that are a bit further off and a bit harder to get to then lose their,
But certainly it's something to consider, but if we think about putting our assets together through cooperatives, so it is the cooperative itself that could take care of going around and picking up the waste, and not the producer of the waste themselves. So it's just a question of a business model around that, and but that is very important questions. But I would not. I'm not foreseeing that the small one will not have an opportunity there either. I think this, so because the big one will not be the solution for everything.
So yeah, Dorinda, then Boogie had also a comment.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, but even though I think indeed in some cases we'll have to collect sludge from many places at the same time, water is not that funny to transport, so I definitely can imagine that you'll have your microalgae next to your fish farm and then transport the rest of the sludge somewhere else. And also, if we're just looking at the numbers of nitrogen and phosphorus and sludge, it is a lot. So it's not just going to be microalgae that are going to save the world in that sense, or the yeast, or like we'll probably need the whole scala of products. And then it might be that one little fish farm says, okay, I'm going to produce microalgae for this very high value purpose, where there is actually a market that's relatively small, and I can be one of the players in that market. So I think there's a lot of possibilities that you can fine-tune to fit your situation, and that don't necessarily have to be able or to be valid for the next door neighbor that is like 15 times your size.
Boogie, please come.
I just want to comment on your question, Krista, really to the point, and actually bridging over to your answer, which was literally to the point as well. This value chain with logistics being built, it's actually being built right now as we speak, because we see a lot of success by gathering sludge from traditional sea farms, surprisingly good retrieval rate. So this value chain of logistics and offsetting the product into some sort of process, that's already being built. And having that chain, that will obviously be driven by big companies, but the stopover with smaller companies along the transport route won't be a problem. We are already doing this with salmon feed, completely different value, of course, but this is something we know and this is something that's being built. So I think, yes, your point is absolutely something to consider, and there will be a lot of ways to valorize on this resource, which it is. And no, algae won't be able to gobble it all up. We will probably make biocoal, gas, algae, yeast, pyrolysis, fuel cells. So there is literally an ecosystem just waiting to burst forth.
And that's the good news. It's time for final reflections, and also if Tomas or Lars also have any final reflections. Your final reflections, Inma, the future of waste valorization for aquaculture.
Well, I have that we need to support industry. Industry is looking for solution for the immediate challenge. In this sense, we need to understand how the process are and try to support in terms of the identification of new markets and the evaluation of the efficiency of the processes. So, yeah.
And the role of quantification, getting
Exactly.
numbers on these things.
Exactly.
So,
in the end, we need metrics to evaluate this.
Dominic.
I know. I would like to invite all the people, especially online, who have been following and who have been interested in one or another of the many results we have been presenting during these 2 days and also today, to take direct contact with the presenter or through you, Dorothy, or Björgulfur for the member of the cluster. Take contact, and we'll have a follow-up face-to-face meeting on specific action and specific aspects, and that will be my call. So, because
we're very interested in building new projects,
Absolutely.
building on the iFishIENCi legacy.
And as you said, so we have been building this business as unusual, bringing together in these 4 years or 4.5 years project people from very different horizons and succeeding in working together and creating value together, which is an achievement in itself. And also this result in itself is something we want to promote further with broadening our networks and the connections.
Excellent. And Dorinda?
Yeah, well, as we've seen, technically it's already possible. We still need to optimize to design these value chains, and I think a next step that we have to contribute to is also to make it allowed. So to provide the data to legislation to say, look, if you do this, then you can actually, and it's fine, take away that it's not allowed, and we can do this.
Wonderful. And then Tomas, our iFishIENCi project coordinator, please, can I end this session with your reflections?
My main reflection would be to highlight again a little bit the first presentation, the importance of the regulatory framework, because the waste valorization needs a very supportive regulatory framework and environment, and this has to be done on EU level and national level as well. And just to give you an example, I think I will just touch this topic a little bit, that for example the feces of the fish are not considered as manure at the moment according to the EU regulation, and therefore it is not possible to use it for agricultural fertilization. I don't know where is this process now, because I know the Federation of European Aquaculture Producers and Aquaculture Advisory Council initiated that this should be changed in the European regulation, and the Commission answer was positive on this, that they will change the regulation. But these type of things has to be happen to be able to valorize the waste.
Focus on regulation, getting rid of the barriers. The fact that fish feces is not considered manure is also kind of not so rational, perhaps, from a scientific point of view. So bringing in those arguments, science-based arguments, to make the regulation in line with also the goals that we're trying to get to for our European Green Deal. Thank you to all our participants here in Bergen, and to all of our participants online. Our website, iFishIENCi.eu, will have the recordings of this session and the PowerPoints. And like Dominic said, don't hesitate to get in contact with us to draw up new projects and to understand how we can capitalize on the results from this Research and Innovation EU Horizon 2020 project, iFishIENCi. Thank you very much.